Poppy Playtime as a mascot horror game has seen a huge shift in public opinion over the last year or so, with Chapters 1 and 2 seen as mediocre kids games, while Chapter 3 was considered absolute peak by correct people. The series had gone from dumb kids games to genuine horror that innovated the mascot horror genre in all of the best ways possible. And coming off of that Chapter 3 hype, people were very excited to see what was coming next with Chapter 4. The marketing for this chapter was insanely good, with multiple cinematic trailers giving us terrifying looks at the new monsters, as well as a gameplay trailer giving us an idea of what to expect from the actual game. And on January 30th, 2025, the game would finally launch after exactly a year since Chapter 3. And, well, it's complicated. The reception of Chapter 4 has been extremely mixed. You either really love it or you really hate it. This was due to several things, with the main one being a decent amount of bugs upon launch, some of which being more devastating than others. But in an extremely thoughtful move, Mob Entertainment has since patched most of these bugs, putting the game in a much more playable state. In fact, had I not waited for these patches, this video would have been out way sooner. However, I thought it made sense to give Mob some time to fix things. I'm still kinda disappointed that Mob released the game in the state they did, but at least they had the nobility to quickly fix things. Oh, and what did I think of the game? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Make sure to tighten your grab packs and throw on your gas masks as we descend down into the petrifying prison of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. Oh yeah, by the way, spoilers for the entire game. Really quick before I actually review the game, I want to quickly discuss if I think this chapter is an overall downgrade or upgrade from Chapter 3. I really love Poppy Playtime Chapter 3, and I had decently high expectations for Mob to make a somehow even better game. However, I overall do consider this chapter a downgrade. I don't think this game looks nearly as good as Chapter 3, although that may have just been due to my own computer's limitations. I don't think this chapter is nearly as scary, there aren't a lot of new gameplay mechanics introduced, and I think this chapter is overall just kinda worse than its predecessor. Now, that's not me saying this game is bad by any means, it's still leagues better than Chapters 1 and 2, but I do think it is a downgrade from Chapter 3 in a lot of aspects, which we'll discuss now. Starting with gameplay, this is actually something that I think this chapter does better. For some reason, Mob decided to suddenly ditch the puzzle-focused gameplay of Poppy Playtime for new things such as stealth mechanics. I do think some more puzzles would have been nice, but what we did get plus the new stuff is still good. Yarnaby's stealthing AI is honestly extremely well made, and I applaud Mob heavily for creating AI this good on your first try. Yarnaby really feels like a threat in this section. There's also a boss fight in this game for Doughy the Dough Man, and I think this is probably one of the best sections of gameplay in this entire series. It's an extremely fun and well thought out fight with lots of mechanics. I do wish that this fight was made a lot less laggy, and that there would be a more consistent way to get the canisters and Doughy, but I still had a ton of fun with this fight. The section with the doctor and all of the robot dudes I thought was pretty cool and definitely scary, but it's also way too easy as the hitboxes for the minions are extremely forgiving. Something I noticed about this chapter is that there aren't really any big chases. There's a small chase with Yarnaby and a slightly bigger one with Doughy right before his fight, but they don't feel super fleshed out like the others in the series, even though they're meant to just serve as transition points. Overall, I do like the gameplay of this chapter a lot. There's a few minor sections that I like as well, such as the one with the Jumbo Baba Chops plushie and the Nightmare Critters attack in the prison, and those are pretty fun to play. Good job, Mob. Oh yeah, by the way, next chapter please add more new hands instead of just reusing old ones, thanks. Next we're talking about story, and this chapter is easily the best the series has ever seen in terms of story. Each tape in this chapter is its own masterpiece, and each one feels so well written and beautifully executed. Although my favorite one has to be the one with the prototype and Harley Sawyer. These two characters, in my opinion, have some of the best writing in all of mascot horror, and I love listening to the two of them talk to each other, and huge shout out to both of their voice actors. We learn so much about these characters and this world through the tapes this time around, and I'm a big fan of that. The cutscenes in this chapter are also really well written, especially the final one with Poppy and Kissy. This chapter does actually drop the bombshells that A, Ollie is the prototype, and B, Poppy is Elliot's daughter, and I think both of these revelations are pretty cool, and I hope Mob is able to do something cool with them. It does seem like Chapter 5 is going to be the last one, and I think Mob has done a good job of setting things up for that final installment. Finally, I think Huggy coming back is pretty cool, but I do hope that something interesting is actually done with this, so that it isn't super obvious that it's just fan service.
Pianosaurus, he plays just for us.
Next up is characters, and before I talk about them further, I want to highlight a huge criticism that many people, including me, have with this chapter. The fact that this chapter has too many characters, and a lot of them aren't used to their full potential. Yarnaby, terrifying design and fun gameplay, but he dies extremely embarrassingly halfway through and is never seen again. Harley Sawyer, a terrifying concept for a villain that just talks throughout the game until we kill him near the end and he again just never shows up. Pianosaurus, great design and cool reveal, but he dies immediately after his introduction. I really wish that Mob would have either just saved these characters for Chapter 5, or just scrapped them, as having them all compete for the spotlight feels very strange, but I still do like them. Yarnaby has a great design and is used pretty well, Pianosaurus has a great design, the Doctor is extremely well written, the Nightmare Critters serve as fun little annoyances throughout the game, and Dowie is probably the one character that is actually used really well and has an excellent character arc and personality. Or personalities, I should say. Overall, decent job, but all of the characters should have been fleshed out more. The final major section of this video is visuals plus horror, as I don't have much to say on either of these topics. Starting with visuals, as I mentioned earlier, I do think this game looks worse than Chapter 3. However, it still looks phenomenal. All of the textures are top-notch, the lighting is really dynamic in certain areas, and the character designs are all phenomenal, Yarnaby especially. I do hope that Chapter 5 is able to capture the same visual greatness as Chapter 3, but only time will tell. As for horror, I'm gonna be honest, this aspect disappointed me a little bit. It feels like Mob was trying to put a lot more horror into the themes and environments of this chapter rather than the gameplay, as the prison is an absolutely terrifying location, filled with corpses and labs and stuff, but this chapter doesn't really have an equivalent to Dog Day being eaten alive, you know? I do hope that future chapters are able to find a good balance between direct and indirect horror, so that the player can feel scared from both the gameplay and the underlying themes, but who knows what'll happen. Overall, Chapter 4 of Poppy Playtime is a good showing of Poppy Playtime's story, gameplay, and character designs, but lacks good horror and balancing of its characters. I would probably recommend this chapter, as long as you don't mind the occasional lag or don't care about story. Looking back at my predictions video, I got a lot of things right besides a few characters like Boxy Boo or the Nightmare Critters, but I'm still taking that as a win. We did only have to wait a year for this one instead of a nearly 2-year wait like Chapter 3, but I still would have rather just taken a delay from Mob so they could iron things out. Overall, I'd give this chapter a 7.5 out of 10. A solid showing, but certain things definitely could have been improved and should be for future chapters. But anyways, that's all from me. I'm Supersonic, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.